Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I was never a nervous traveler. Even back then, when we were in our mid-20s with barely enough money for gas and snacks, I still felt safer on the road than I ever did walking alone at night back home. There was something freeing about it. Windows down, music up, wind rushing through the car as the landscape blurred past. I always thought the road was the safest place to be. Until that night. It was the summer of 2014, and my best friend Nora and I had planned a 10-day trip from Kansas City to San Diego. We'd mapped out a route with pit stops in Denver, Moab, Vegas, and finally the coast. We'd done a few short trips before, weekends to Nashville or Austin, but this was our big one, a kind of last hurrah before real life locked us down with jobs and rent and things we didn't want to think about yet. We left on a Friday morning, sun already high in the sky, the kind of blue above you only get in the Midwest. The car was a beat-up silver Hyundai Elantra that belonged to Nora's older brother, no air conditioning, a missing hubcap, and a weird smell in the back seat that we chose to ignore. But it ran, and it was ours for the week. By the time we hit the Colorado state line, the sun was setting. Orange streaks flared across the sky like some painter got too enthusiastic with the brush. We'd planned to spend the night in a cheap motel in Grand Junction before heading into Utah the next day. It was just before 9 p.m. when we pulled off I-70 near a little town called Halpern Springs. Not even a real town, just a gas station, a diner, and a couple trailers off the highway. We stopped to refuel, stretch our legs, and switch drivers. I'd been driving for hours and was half delirious from Red Bulls and trail mix. The gas station had that lonely, too quiet feel that only comes out after dark in places no one cares about. The only light came from the buzzing fluorescence overhead and the flickering neon open sign in the window. I noticed another car at the far pump, a dull green Jeep Liberty with a Colorado plate, and two girls standing next to it talking and laughing as they filled up. They looked about our age, maybe college students doing the same kind of trip we were. It was one of those quick, meaningless observations you make and forget 2 minutes later. Or usually you do. But behind them, parked one lane over, was a black pickup truck, big, old, and loud. The kind that roars when it starts and rattles like something's loose under the hood. The guy behind the wheel looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s. Tan skin, scruffy beard, worn baseball cap. Nothing too unusual, until I noticed he wasn't getting gas or moving. Just sitting there, staring through his windshield directly at the girls. At first I thought I was imagining it, but when I stepped out to stretch and looked again, his eyes were fixed on them, unblinking, following their every move. It was so blatant it made my skin crawl. I nudged Nora, who was still in the passenger seat. "Do you see that guy?" I whispered. She followed my gaze, eyebrows knitting together. "Yeah, that's weird." We both watched for a few more seconds until the guy suddenly leaned back in his seat and started his engine. The truck idled for a second, then rumbled forward, slowly pulling around the side of the building out of sight. "Let's go inside," I said, trying to keep my voice even. We grabbed some snacks, water bottles, protein bars, a couple bags of chips, and went up to pay. The cashier was a woman in her 50s, heavy eyeliner, smoking behind the counter like it was still allowed in there. "You girls driving through?" she asked, bagging our stuff. "Yeah," Nora said. "Headed to Utah." "Stick to the highway," the woman muttered, lighting another cigarette off the end of the last one. "Don't stop in Castle Ridge. Cops are crooked. Had a girl go missing there last month. Backpacker. They never found her." She said it so casually it felt like she was warning us about bad food instead of a missing person. Back outside, the Jeep was gone. The lot was empty. I climbed into the passenger seat and checked my phone. 1 bar of signal. Nora got behind the wheel, turned the key, and we pulled back onto the road. We hadn't gone more than 5 minutes down the highway when we saw them again. The green Jeep maybe half a mile ahead of us in the right lane. The pickup was behind them, too close, tailgating so hard that its headlights lit up the inside of the Jeep like a spotlight. "What the hell is he doing?" Nora asked, leaning forward. I watched as the pickup jerked to the side, pulling into the left lane, then sped up to ride alongside the girls. I could see the driver clearly now. He had his window down and was yelling something across to them. The girls looked panicked, one of them on her phone, the other gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles. "He's trying to get them to stop," I said. Sure enough, the Jeep's turn signal flicked on. They were slowing down, pulling toward the shoulder. "No, no, no," I muttered. "Don't stop. Please don't stop." The pickup hit the brakes too, but something must have spooked him. Maybe he saw us coming up behind, maybe he didn't expect witnesses. Because just as the Jeep rolled to a halt, the truck roared forward and sped off down the interstate. We pulled in right behind the girls. Nora hit the hazards and we both jumped out. The two women, one blonde, one with a high ponytail, Mona looked shaken. "He said he was a cop," the blonde stammered as we approached. "Said we were swerving and he had to pull us over, but he didn't have a badge or anything. He just started shouting out of his window. Said if we didn't pull over, we'd go to jail." "He's not a cop," I said. "We saw him at the gas station. He was watching you." They both looked like they were about to cry. The one with the ponytail, Jessie, she said her name was, nodded and whispered, "Thank you. I think we would have pulled over if you hadn't been behind us." We stayed with them for a few minutes, exchanged numbers, and promised to follow each other until the next rest stop. They contacted the police from there, gave descriptions, plates, the whole bit. We didn't stick around long after. Something about the encounter made everything feel off, like we'd stared at something truly evil and it had stared back. Back in the car, we didn't talk much. I think we both realized how close it had been. For them. For us. That was the only time on the trip anything went really wrong. But it changed us. For the rest of the drive, we only traveled in daylight. No more late-night highways, no more empty gas stations. We kept pepper spray in the front cup holder and locked the doors at every stop. When we got back to Kansas City, I didn't tell my parents. Nora didn't tell hers. We didn't want them to worry, but that story never really left us. Over the years, we drifted. Life does that. Jobs, relationships, different cities. But every so often, we find ourselves back home at the same time. And when we meet for drinks, there's always a moment, just one, when the laughter fades and someone brings it up again. The guy in the pickup, the headlights, the look on those girls' faces, and we all go quiet because we know how different things could have been. We were lucky, but someone else out there wasn't. And sometimes, when I'm driving alone and the road ahead is empty, I still check my rearview mirror, just in case. I wasn't planning on going home that weekend. In fact, I'd been avoiding it. Not because I didn't miss my family, I did, painfully so, but because home meant obligation, emotional weight, conversations I wasn't ready to have. I was 22, finishing my last year at the University of Northern Utah, and I had just started to feel like I was finally standing on my own 2 feet. But all of that came crashing down with one phone call. It was a Thursday night around 11:20 p.m. I had just finished a late cram session in the campus library, trying to prep for a molecular biology midterm. My phone buzzed in my hoodie pocket, and when I saw Mom light up on the screen, I almost let it go to voicemail. But something made me answer. "Hey," I said, voice tired. Her voice was shaking. "Sophie, it's Grandpa. He's in the hospital. They think it might be soon. Like this weekend, I didn't say anything at first. Just let the silence hang between us." My stomach dropped. Grandpa Ray had practically raised me while Mom worked double shifts as a nurse when I was little. He was tough, gentle, and had a laugh that could make you forget your problems for a minute. "I'll come home," I finally said, heart pounding. "I didn't want to pressure you," she started. "You're not. I'll pack and leave tonight. I'll be there by morning." It was a 9-hour drive from Logan, Utah to my family's home in a small California desert town called Twin Rivers, just past the Nevada border. I'd done the drive before, usually with friends or broken into chunks. But this time would be solo, just me, the road, and too many thoughts. 1:12 a.m. On the road, I packed light, a backpack with a change of clothes, my laptop, and a couple snacks. My old Jeep Liberty groaned as I pulled onto the dark highway, headlights stretching ahead into black nothingness. The roads were empty, just the occasional trucker or distant taillights disappearing over a rise. I kept the windows cracked and the radio low. Talk radio, the kind that plays interviews and true crime stories. It helped keep my brain focused, awake. Somewhere past the Utah-Nevada border, the landscape flattened into a sea of sand and low shrubs, the kind of place that felt untouched by time. There was a gas station I always stopped at about 6 hours in, Rusty Joe's Gas and Go, just outside of a ghost town called Silver Bend. It was one of those places with faded paint, humming neon signs, and old vending machines that looked like they hadn't worked since 1995. It was also my last reliable stop before hitting the stretch of desert highway that ran parallel to an old mining route. There'd be no signal, no lights, and no civilization for the next 100 miles. 5:47 a.m. Rusty Joe's. The sky was just starting to fade into a bruised lavender. My eyes were heavy, but adrenaline and a gas station Red Bull had me functional. I pulled into the station, killed the engine, and stepped out into the chill air. The place looked deserted as usual. A single flickering light illuminated Pump 4 where I parked. Inside the mini-mart, a tired old man stood behind the counter watching an ancient box TV with static lines running through it. "Morning," I said, grabbing a coffee. He grunted, not even looking away from the screen. I used the bathroom, came back out, and sat on my hood sipping the coffee, trying to psych myself up for the last leg of the drive. Then habit kicked in. I'd been concealed carrying ever since an incident in Salt Lake a year earlier. My dad had helped me get the permits, but California didn't allow it. So before crossing the state line, I always disassembled and locked it up in a case. I opened my trunk, knelt down, and started breaking down the handgun, carefully and methodically, like I'd done a dozen times before. What I didn't know was that someone was watching me. 6:04 a.m. The grab. I stood up, stretched my arms, turned to toss my empty coffee cup in the trash. And that's when it happened. An arm wrapped around my chest, tight. Another clamped over my mouth before I could scream. I thrashed instinctively, but he was strong, bigger than me. He smelled like old sweat, leather, and something metallic. Maybe blood. My feet left the ground. I felt like a rag doll in his grip. I tried to scream again, but it came out muffled. I twisted my neck, bit down on his hand, hard, and he cursed, loud, dropping me for just a second. I hit the gravel and kicked backward, trying to scramble under the Jeep. He caught my ankle. And I thought, this is it. This is how women disappear. I clawed at the gravel, palms bleeding, and screamed again, this time loud, primal, from the pit of my stomach. The sound echoed across the open desert, then tires, screeching. A red sedan, a junky Honda Civic, pulled into the lot like it was trying to outrun something. 4 teens spilled out, wearing hoodies and pajama pants, probably headed back from a party or sunrise hike. "Hey!" one of them shouted. "Let her go!" The man bolted. No hesitation. Just dropped my ankle and ran like an animal into the desert. 2 of the boys chased after him, one even tossing a rock. The other 2 rushed to me. "Are you okay?" the girl asked, kneeling beside me. I don't know," I gasped. "I think, yeah." "Holy crap, you're bleeding," said one of the boys. "We're calling 911. He handed me a water bottle and helped me lean against the passenger door. I was shaking, couldn't stop, couldn't even hold the bottle properly. The girl, Rachel, sat next to me and put a hoodie over my shoulders. I didn't know her, but I think I'll always remember her eyes. Calm, grounded, steady. When the sheriff's deputy finally arrived, a local guy named Daryl, I couldn't give a full description, just pieces. White male, maybe 6 feet, sunburned skin, heavy boots, no vehicle, no obvious weapon. They searched, found nothing, not even footprints in the hard-packed sand. The 2 boys who chased him said he vanished into a dry wash behind the lot. But I know what I felt, and I know how close I came to being just another missing person poster. I made it home in time to see Grandpa. He was weak, but he squeezed my hand and told me he was proud. He died 3 days later. I never told my mom what happened at the gas station. Never told anyone, really, except the police. I didn't want her to worry, but that moment, that sheer helplessness, changed me. For months, I couldn't sleep without seeing those arms around me again. Couldn't stop hearing that low grunt, that sour breath against my ear, and most of all, I couldn't stop thinking about how lucky I'd been. Because if that Honda Civic had pulled in 30 seconds later, I wouldn't be here writing this. Months later, I drove out to the same spot. I don't know why. Maybe to reclaim it, maybe to make peace with it. Rusty Joe's was still there. No, still dusty, still buzzing with that same old neon. I didn't get out this time. Just parked and watched the sun rise. Then I sent 4 texts to the numbers I had saved from that night. Just a simple message. Thank you. I'm still here because of you. Only one replied, always stay safe out there. And I swear I've never cried harder in my life. The storm came out of nowhere. One moment the sky was clear, stars bright over the Texas flatlands, and the next, clouds rolled in like bruises across the horizon. I was maybe 20 minutes south of Lufkin, driving alone, trying to make it to Houston before midnight. I was on Route 59, a long 2-lane stretch with no towns for miles. The kind of road that makes you realize how small you are. Just headlights, asphalt, and the hum of tires against pavement. The first drops of rain hit my windshield around 10:15 p.m. I remember checking the clock because I'd just been thinking about stopping for gas. Then within minutes the rain went from drizzle to sheets of water so thick my wipers couldn't keep up. Visibility dropped to almost zero. Lightning forked across the sky, and thunder rolled so hard I felt it in my chest. 10:32 p.m. The figure on the road. I slowed to a crawl, maybe 20 miles an hour. My high beams barely cut through the rain, and the road looked like a river of moving shadows. Then my stomach dropped. There was someone standing in the middle of the road. At first I thought it might have been a deer or a trick of the lightning. But no, it was clearly a person. Tall, thin, drenched. They didn't move when my headlights hit them. Just stood there, head tilted, one arm hanging strangely limp at their side. I slammed the brakes and skidded to a stop a few feet away. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it over the rain. I rolled my window down just enough to yell, "Hey! You okay?" The figure didn't respond, didn't even flinch. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but of course, no service, just that mocking SOS symbol in the top corner of the screen. When I looked back up, the road was empty. 10:34 p.m. Vanished. I blinked, squinting through the downpour, headlights scanning the asphalt. Nothing, no one, just rain and empty road stretching ahead. I sat there for a moment, debating whether to get out or just drive. Every instinct screamed, don't. Then, a thud. Something hit the back of my car. Hard. I froze, breath caught in my throat. I turned in my seat, peering through the rear window, but the rain on the glass was too thick. All I could see was distorted movement. It looked like someone was standing right behind the car. "Okay," I whispered, hands trembling. "Nope. No, no, no." I threw it in drive and floored it. Tires spun on the wet asphalt before catching, and I sped off, the car fishtailing slightly as I tried to regain control. For a few seconds, all I could hear was my breathing and the rain hammering the roof. Then, in the rearview mirror, lightning flashed. And for a split second, illuminated in that blinding white light, I saw something. Someone running after my car. barefoot, arms flailing, mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear over the storm. 10:46 p.m. The old gas station. I didn't stop until I saw lights. A small, flickering sign for Pete's Fuel and Bait. It looked half abandoned, but at that point I didn't care. I pulled under the awning, jumped out, and sprinted inside, drenched and shaking. An old man behind the counter looked up from a newspaper. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. I think there's someone on the road back there," I stammered. "A person, maybe hurt. I almost hit them." He frowned. "You mean Route 59? I nodded. He leaned back slowly, eyes narrowing. "You didn't stop, did you?" I almost did," I said. "But they disappeared, and then something hit my car." He sighed, like he'd heard it all before. "You're not the first." "What do you mean?" He turned to the shelf behind him and pulled down an old photo, black and white, edges yellowed with age. It showed a young couple standing by a 1950s pickup, smiling. "That's Pete and his wife, Clara," he said quietly. "They died right out there. Route 59 flood, 1968. They were trying to drive home in a storm. Never made it." I stared at him, waiting for him to say more. "Every few years," he continued, "someone comes through during a bad storm. Says they saw a man or a woman on the road or heard knocking on their trunk. Some say they picked him up, and by the time they got here, the seat was empty." I felt cold all over, the kind of chill that goes bone deep. "Do you think it was them?" I asked. He shrugged. "I don't think about it much anymore. But if you want my advice, don't drive that stretch after dark. Some roads don't forget 11:07 p.m. The drive away." I sat in my car for a long time before starting it again. The rain was easing up now, just a drizzle. I checked my back seat, the trunk, even under the car before pulling out. Nothing there. But as I drove off, I glanced once more in the mirror. And in the reflection, for just a heartbeat, I saw a handprint on the inside of my rear window. It slowly faded as I watched. I didn't sleep that night, and to this day I'll drive the long way around, even if it adds hours, because I'll never take Route 59 again. I was 19, broke, and halfway through a cross-country move from Los Angeles to Chicago. My old Saturn sedan barely made it out of California, overheating every few hours, and I was living off gas station coffee and beef jerky. By the time I hit Arizona, the desert had swallowed the world. No radio stations, no lights except the occasional semi. Just the sound of the engine humming beneath the stars. I told myself I'd stop at the next open place to eat and rest. But hours passed. Then finally, like a mirage, I saw it. A glowing sign in the darkness. Mabel's Diner, open 24 hours. 12:47 a.m. The only light for miles. The parking lot was gravel, and the diner looked like something straight out of the 1950s. Checkered tile, chrome stools, red neon buzzing in the window. There were only two cars outside, an old Chevy truck and a dusty police cruiser. Inside, the air smelled like coffee, bacon grease, and nostalgia. A middle-aged waitress with a stiff beehive hairdo smiled as I walked in. "Sit wherever you like, hun." I slid into a booth by the window. The vinyl stuck to my arms. There was a jukebox in the corner playing a slow Patsy Cline song that echoed through the empty room. The only other customers were a man in a sheriff's uniform and a trucker sitting at the counter. Neither spoke. 1:03 a.m. Strange conversation. The waitress poured me coffee without asking. "You look tired," she said. "Yeah," I replied, smiling weakly. "Been driving all day." She nodded, eyes soft. "Long way from home?" "L.A.," I said. "Headed to Chicago." Her smile faltered. "Be careful up that road, sweetheart." "Lot of strange things happen after midnight," I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking. "Like what?" Before she could answer, the sheriff turned in his seat. "People vanish," he said flatly. The diner went quiet. Even the jukebox seemed to fade into static. I tried to play it off. You mean, like accidents? He shook his head. No, like they stop for gas or food and just never get back on the road. We find their cars days later, doors open, engines cold. No footprints, no struggle, just gone. I forced a smile. You're trying to scare me. He stared at me for a long moment before turning back to his coffee. Just telling you the truth, ma'am. 1:27 a.m. The stranger arrives. The bell over the door jingled. A man walked in, tall, wearing a long brown coat despite the heat. His face was hidden under a wide-brimmed hat. The waitress's expression changed instantly. She froze mid-pour, eyes darting toward the sheriff. The man sat 2 booths away from me. Didn't order, didn't move, just sat there. The sheriff stood up slowly. "Evenin'," he said, resting a hand on his holster. The stranger didn't answer. Then he smiled, just barely, and said in a low, gravelly voice, "You should have kept driving, Sheriff." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. The waitress whispered something under her breath. A prayer, maybe. Then the lights flickered. 1:29 a.m. Darkness. Everything went black for maybe 3 seconds. When the lights came back on, the sheriff was gone. His coffee cup sat on the counter, still steaming. The trucker cursed, standing up. Where the hell'd he go? The stranger didn't move, didn't even blink. The waitress whispered, "Not again." I stood, heart pounding, ready to bolt for the door. "What's going on?" I demanded. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. Every few months. Someone walks in, someone else disappears. Always after midnight, I looked back at the booth. But the stranger was gone too. The door hadn't opened. The bell hadn't rung. But there were wet footprints leading toward the back exit. Footprints that faded halfway across the floor. 1:42 a.m. The road again. The waitress begged me to leave, to keep driving. She packed me a slice of pie in a paper bag and said, "Don't stop till you hit Texas." I didn't argue. Outside, the sheriff's cruiser was still parked where it had been. Engine off, driver's door open, radio hissing with static. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove until the diner's neon disappeared completely in my rearview mirror. I didn't stop again until dawn. A week later, once I reached Chicago, I tried looking up Mabel's Diner, Arizona. No results, no address, no mention in old directories or maps. But sometimes when I drive at night and scan the horizon, I swear I still see that faint red glow, flickering out there in the desert, waiting for the next lost traveler to pull in for coffee. I never used to be scared of driving at night. Actually, I liked it. The peace, the quiet, no traffic, no headlights blinding me in the rear view. Just me, my music, and the long stretch of road. That was before that night, before I learned what it really feels like to be truly alone and completely helpless. It started simple enough. I was helping my friend Lauren move from one small town to another, from Linden to Maple Hollow, 2 dots on the map in the middle of southern Texas. She had flown ahead to meet her landlord and pick up the keys, so I volunteered to drive her car down with a few boxes and her cat in the back seat. The drive was supposed to take about 4 hours. Easy, I thought. I'd done long drives before, but not through winding, unlit back roads with no cell signal in a thunderstorm, and in a car whose passenger side lock didn't work. That part mattered later. At first, the route was straightforward. Interstate for an hour, then a 2-lane highway. But somewhere between Refiner's Ridge and Maple Hollow, I must have missed a turn. No signs, no lights, just miles of black trees and rain hammering the windshield. By the time I realized I was lost, my GPS had no signal. I pulled into a tiny gas station, one of those old ones with a single flickering bulb and a Pepsi sign half hanging off the roof. Inside, an old man behind the counter told me I could go back the long way or cut through the old back road to save time. I should have taken the long way. God, I should have. The back road started paved, then turned to gravel, then mud. The storm picked up. It poured so hard I could barely see 10 feet ahead. The wipers screamed back and forth uselessly, and every crack of thunder sounded closer than the last. The woods pressed in tight on both sides, the trees bending under the wind. That's when the fear started. Not panic yet, just a creeping awareness that I was far from anyone. I kept thinking, just find a road sign, just one. Something that said Maple Hollow 5 miles or County Road 9. Anything. Then I saw it, a battered green sign leaning to one side. The letters were barely visible through the rain, but I figured if I got closer I could make it out. There was no shoulder, so I just stopped near the edge of the road, hazards flashing red in the dark. I leaned over the console, wiping at the foggy windshield with my sleeve, trying to read it. That's when the passenger door swung open. For half a second I thought the wind had caught it. Then I saw him. A man, drenched, clothes plastered to his skin, was pulling himself inside. No car nearby, no flashlight, just him. He didn't speak, didn't look shocked or desperate. He just climbed in like he belonged there. "Get out!" I screamed, slamming the shifter into drive. He kept coming, one hand gripping the frame, the other reaching toward me. I hit the gas. The tires spun in the mud, fishtailing before they caught. The car lurched forward, and the man stumbled, lost his grip, fell backward into the rain. The door slammed open against the wind, flapping wildly as I sped down the road. I didn't look back. Couldn't. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't steer. I just kept driving, heart pounding, headlights cutting through the torrent of rain. Every bump made me flinch, thinking he'd grab the door again. The storm howled. The open door banged against the frame again and again until finally I managed to lean over and slam it shut. I don't remember the next few miles, only that somehow the road turned paved again, and a "Welcome to Maple Hollow" sign appeared through the mist. By the time I reached Lauren's new house, she ran outside smiling, asking how the drive was. I opened the door, stepped out, and vomited right there on the driveway. I didn't tell her what happened until days later, and even then I left out the part where I saw something in the passenger mirror, just for a second, before the door flew open. A shadow standing dead center in the road behind me, watching. I wasn't planning on going home that weekend. Not because I didn't miss my family, and I did, painfully so, but because home meant obligation. It meant talking about things I wasn't ready to face. I was 22, finishing my last year at the University of Northern Utah, finally starting to feel like I had my own life. Then one Thursday night around 11:20 p.m., my phone rang. It was Mom. "Sophie, it's Grandpa. He's in the hospital. They think it might be soon Grandpa Ray, the man who practically raised me while Mom worked night shifts as a nurse." I didn't even think. I just said, "I'll come home." "I'll leave tonight." Home was in Twin Rivers, California, a small desert town just past the Nevada border, 9 hours away. So I packed light, a backpack, a few snacks, and my old Jeep Liberty, and I hit the road, 1:12 a.m., leaving Logan. The highway was empty. The radio played a low hum of talk shows and true crime podcasts to keep me awake. The desert stretched out in front of me, a black ocean under a bruised purple sky. Somewhere past the Utah-Nevada border, the land flattened. Miles of sand, shrubs, and silence. I'd done the drive before, and I always stopped at one place halfway through. Rusty Joe's Gas and Go. It wasn't much. A few pumps, a buzzing neon sign, and a convenience store that looked frozen in 1995. But it was my last real stop before 100 miles of nothing. 5:47 a.m. Rusty Joe's. The sun hadn't risen yet. The world was still tinted gray-blue, that weird half-light that makes everything look a little unreal. I parked under the only working light at Pump 4. Inside, a tired old man sat behind the counter, watching static on a box TV. "Morning," I said softly, grabbing a coffee. He didn't even look up, just grunted. I used the bathroom, came back, and sat on my hood for a minute, breathing in the cold air, watching the horizon start to pale. That's when habit kicked in. I carried a concealed handgun, a gift from my dad after an incident in Salt Lake the year before. Utah allowed it. California didn't. So before crossing the border, I'd always disassemble it and lock it up. I popped open the trunk, knelt down, and started taking the weapon apart piece by piece. It was mechanical, calming, something to focus on before the long desert stretch. What I didn't realize was that someone was watching me. 6:04 a.m. The grab, I tossed the empty coffee cup into the trash and turned back toward my Jeep. Before I could react, an arm wrapped around my chest, another clamped over my mouth. He was behind me, tall, strong, smelling of sweat, leather, and metal. I tried to scream, but it came out muffled. My feet lifted off the ground. I kicked, twisted, bit his hand. He cursed, loud, and dropped me for just a second. I hit the gravel, scrambled toward the Jeep, trying to crawl underneath. He caught my ankle and yanked me back hard. Panic blurred everything. All I could think was, this is how women disappear. I clawed at the ground, gravel tearing my palms. I screamed again, louder, a raw, guttural sound that didn't even feel like my own. Then, tires, screeching. A red Honda Civic skidded into the lot, music blaring. 4 teenagers jumped out, hoodies, pajama pants, still laughing until they saw me. "Hey, let her go!" one of the boys shouted. The man hesitated for half a breath, then bolted. He dropped my ankle and ran full speed into the desert. 2 of the boys chased him, the other 2 ran to me. The girl, Rachel, knelt beside me, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. "You're okay. You're safe now. We've got you." I remember the cold metal of the car door against my back, the water bottle she handed me, and the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. 6:30 a.m. The aftermath. A sheriff's deputy arrived 20 minutes later. Local guy, name tag read Daryl. I gave what description I could. White male, 6 feet, sunburned, heavy boots, no vehicle. They searched the area. Nothing, not even footprints they could track. The teens said he vanished into a dry wash behind the building, like he'd just disappeared. I don't remember much after that. I know I made it home later that day. Grandpa was still alive, barely. He smiled when he saw me. 3 days later, he was gone. Weeks later, I never told my mom what happened. She had enough to grieve. But for months afterward, I couldn't sleep without seeing that gravel lot, those arms around me, that smell of sweat and metal. Every noise outside my apartment made me jump. Every long drive felt like a risk. A year later, I drove past Rusty Joe's again. It hadn't changed. Same flickering neon, same cracked pavement. I didn't get out this time. Just parked, watched the sunrise, and sent 4 text messages. To the numbers saved in my phone from that night. "Thank you. I'm still here because of you." Only one replied, "Always stay safe out there." And I swear I've never cried harder in my life. I was never a nervous traveler. Even when I was younger and broke, road tripping with gas station snacks and barely enough cash for a motel, the road always felt safer than the city at night. Until that summer. Until that night. It was 2014. My best friend Nora and I were both 26 and restless. We'd planned a 10-day drive from Kansas City to San Diego, Denver, Moab, Vegas, then the coast. A last hurrah before jobs, rent, and the slow gravity of adulthood locked us down. We left on a bright Friday morning in Nora's brother's beat-up silver Hyundai Elantra. No AC, one missing hubcap, weird smell in the back seat. But it was freedom on 4 wheels. By sunset, we were crossing into Colorado, sky painted orange and gold. The gas station around 9 p.m. We pulled off near a tiny town called Halpern Springs, barely a gas station, a diner, and a few trailers. The place was empty, too quiet, buzzing with a single neon sign. I stretched my legs and noticed another car at the far pump. A dull green Jeep Liberty with Colorado plates and 2 girls about our age laughing beside it. Probably another road trip duo. Then I saw him. A black pickup truck 1 lane over. Big, old, loud, the kind of truck that rattles when it idles. A man sat inside, late 30s, scruffy beard, baseball cap pulled low. Not pumping gas, not moving, just staring at the girls in the Jeep. At first I thought I was imagining it. Then I realized he hadn't blinked. He was tracking them, following every move. I nudged Nora. "Do you see that guy?" She glanced over, frowned. "Yeah, that's creepy." We watched for a few seconds more. Then the man suddenly leaned back, started his engine and rolled slowly around the side of the building, out of sight. Inside, the gas station clerk, a woman in her 50s with heavy eyeliner and a cigarette dangling from her mouth, rang up our snacks. "Stick to the highway," she muttered. "Don't stop in Castle Ridge. Cops are crooked. Girl went missing there last month." She said it so casually it almost sounded routine. When we came back out, the lot was empty. The Jeep was gone. We got in the car and pulled back onto I-7, the hum of the tires steady under us. The chase 10 minutes later, headlights appeared ahead. The same green Jeep in the right lane. And right behind it, the black pickup. He was tailgating so close his brights filled their back window. Nora leaned forward, tense. "What the hell is he doing?" The truck swerved into the left lane, pulled up alongside the Jeep, window down, shouting something we couldn't hear. The girls looked terrified. One was on her phone, the other gripping the wheel so tight her knuckles were white. "He's pretending to be a cop," Nora whispered. Sure enough, the Jeep's blinker came on. They were slowing down, pulling onto the shoulder. "No, no, no," I said. "Don't stop." But just then the pickup braked, hard. Maybe he saw us behind them. Maybe he didn't expect witnesses. Because suddenly he floored it and roared off into the darkness. We stopped behind the Jeep. Nora hit the hazards. The two women jumped out, shaking. "He said he was a cop," the blonde one stammered. "Said we were swerving. Told us to pull over, but he didn't have a badge. Just kept yelling. 'He's not a cop,' I told them. 'We saw him watching you at the gas station.'" Their faces went pale. The girl with the ponytail, Jessie, nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. "We would have stopped if you weren't behind us." We exchanged numbers and agreed to follow each other until the next rest stop. They called the highway patrol from there, gave full descriptions, plate number, everything. We didn't stick around. Aftermath. The rest of the trip went fine, but something changed in both of us. We only drove in daylight after that. Doors locked at every stop. Pepper spray in the cup holder. When we finally got home, we didn't tell our parents. We didn't want them to worry. But that story never left us. Every time Nora and I meet for drinks back in Kansas City, there's always a quiet moment where someone says, "Remember that guy on the highway?" And we go silent, because we both know how close it came. We were lucky. Someone else out there wasn't. And sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night and the road is empty, I still glance in the rearview mirror just in case. We were 3 hours into the drive when I realized something was wrong. Not just wrong. Off. The kind of wrong you feel before you understand it. That quiet hum in your chest when your instincts whisper, "Turn around." It was late August 2019. My friend Evan and I were driving from Phoenix to Albuquerque, taking the long way through Route 191, what locals call the Devil's Highway. It used to be Route 666 before they changed the signs, but everyone still calls it that. We laughed about it at first. 600 miles of desert, abandoned gas stations, and nothingness. The kind of trip we'd tell stories about later. We left around 9 p.m. The plan was to drive through the night, take turns behind the wheel, and crash at a motel by sunrise. Just two friends chasing cheap thrills, bad coffee, and open roads. The desert was endless, black silhouettes of cacti and rocks under a pale slice of moon. No traffic, no signal. Just static from the radio and the low growl of the engine. The first sign around midnight, we passed mile marker 313. A single post on the right side of the road, almost lost in the dark. Evan chuckled. 13 backwards. Bad luck, dude. 10 minutes later, I saw headlights ahead, parked off the shoulder, A red sedan. Driver's door open, hazard lights blinking. Should we stop? I asked. Evan hesitated. Nah, could be a setup, he wasn't wrong. People fake breakdowns to rob travelers. But something in me couldn't shake the image. A car, abandoned, lights flashing in the middle of nowhere. As we passed, I looked out the window. The front seat was empty, but the driver's side door was still swinging, like someone had just stepped out. The stranger. We drove another 20 minutes in silence. Then through the headlights, I saw a figure walking along the road. A man. Same direction we were headed, jeans, gray hoodie, backpack. He was limping slightly, one hand raised like he wanted us to stop. Evan slowed down. What do you think? Something in me twisted. Same side of the road, same direction as the red car. Keep going, I said. As we passed him, the man turned his head and smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when you're relieved someone might help. It was too wide, too still, like he'd been waiting. Evan muttered, "What the hell?" and sped up again. Neither of us spoke for a long time after that. Mile marker 313, again. An hour later, I checked the odometer and frowned. Something wasn't adding up. We should have hit the next town by now. But when the headlights lit up the next sign, it read mile 313. I blinked hard. Did we turn around? Evan shook his head. No way. We haven't taken a single exit. We looked around. Same desert, same mountains, same empty stretch of road. The same mile marker. Evan laughed nervously. Maybe there's another 313, like a duplicate. But my stomach had already dropped. The same red sedan appeared in the distance, door open, hazards blinking. Evan, I see it, he said, voice cracking. We slowed down, hearts pounding. This time we stopped. I opened my door and stepped out. The desert air was freezing, still heavy with that metallic smell right before rain. The red car's engine was cold. Inside, the seats were torn and the keys still hung from the ignition. I turned back toward our car. And there he was, the man in the gray hoodie, standing behind Evan's headlights, maybe 20 feet away. He wasn't limping anymore. He wasn't smiling either, just standing there. Get in the car, I whispered. We slammed the doors, threw it into reverse, and floored it. The man didn't chase us, didn't move at all. Just watched as we drove away. The aftermath. When dawn broke, we finally saw another town sign. Alto Mesa, population 312. We pulled into the first diner we found, shaking, exhausted. The waitress poured us coffee and asked where we were coming from. When I said Route 191, she froze. You came through there last night? We nodded. She glanced at another waiter who slowly set down his tray. Someone went missing there last week, she said. Guy in a gray hoodie. His car broke down around mile 313. Evan and I looked at each other, speechless. Neither of us touched our coffee. We just sat there, staring at the window. And when I finally looked at the car parked outside, I swear to God, there was a dusty handprint on the passenger side window. My side.